All right, quick mic check. Test, test. All right, good to go. Excellent. All right, and with that, good morning, everyone. This is Ross Shabilsky here with D20 Studios. I am the founder of a indie game studio based here in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm currently working on a upcoming turn-based strategy deck builder game called Summoner's Fate. This is our website, summonersfate.com, where you can learn more about the game. We are currently in pre-release, which means the game is available, though it's not officially launched. And we have this awesome spirit of community-driven development where I work one-on-one with the folks playing our game right now, getting their feedback, taking their design suggestions, fixing the bugs you guys find, all kinds of cool stuff. It's a lot of fun. And I do weekly development streams here on Twitch where I actually work on the game, kind of give you an inside look at the process behind it, and invite you to be a part of it with me in the journey. So today is kind of my first time getting back in a few weeks since PAX East, where I just returned with my animator Peter. We were part of the Indie Mega Booth showcase there, and we had our booth set up in the mini booth. I'm going to go ahead and flip my screen over here to my little article I wrote. So I'm a big fan of sharing industry knowledge, sharing the experiences. It's kind of my way of giving back to the game industry and all the folks that have helped me along in my journey. So one of the things I like to do is whenever we do a big event like a PAX is to collect all the experiences, the highlights, the data we were able to track on our demos, and then share that with the industry at large so that other indies looking to showcase now have some basis for what to expect at these showcases, the kind of things they need to bring, what the budget looks like, how to get a really successful demo, these kinds of things. So I thought I'd share this article. It's available on Gamasutra. Just go ahead and search for Ross or PAX East and whatever, it'll come up here. I'm not sure how to actually get the link up here, but if you search for Summoner's Fate, and I'm sure it'll show up in the list here. But I'll just kind of give you some quick recap and highlight of some of the things, kind of speaking from personal, more emotional versus in the article. But this is what our booth looked like here. You can see we had quite a crowd, pretty much nonstop throughout the event. PAX is a very heavily trafficked event. A lot of energy and excitement there, and being part of the Indie Mega Booth, of course, helps a ton for getting visibility because when you look at the sea of developers out there, it's hard to stand out. But the Indie Mega Booth gives the nice ideas like you become part of this school of fish, I guess, in the grand sea of the games out there, and with their they become quite an attraction over the years. It was their 7-year anniversary that they've been doing this now for 7 years at the PAX and other events, and so it was quite an honor to be part of that um, event with them and to be featured within their booth. So kind of give you some more shots here. One of the things that I've learned in my time showcasing at events like this is that that you're bottlenecked by the number of available demos you have. And when you get a crowd going, you don't want to be limited to just one screen because a lot of people are going to be there waiting, and some people will just kind of move along. So you want to, have as much opportunities for the folks that are gathering around to be able to play and get into the game experience. So normally with the mini booth, they set up just like a one station kiosk, and you have kind of like one main PC monitor. But I got pretty creative. They allow you to kind of decorate the booth with a little bit of signage and things like that. So I decided to replace the physical signage with tablets, since our game can play both on desktop and mobile devices. And what I decided to do in this case was hook them all up to these long tether cords and create what I call the demo Hydra. And this would allow folks to be able to play, even if they were standing back in the crowd, those devices all unhook from the display and have long tether cords so that they've got access to the demo. And yeah, that was very, very effective for getting lots of constant players coming in. So if that's an option for you, I highly recommend it. Even if your game doesn't run on mobile devices, the screens are great eye candy for playing your trailer reel or showcasing some interesting marketing pieces. I guess I'll kind of point out here we've got this little red imp guy. This screen here was dedicated entirely to our little bit of marketing branding that we came up with to kind of stand out. Naturally, a turn-based deck builder game is kind of hard to explain, and when you see trailers on screens and monitors as you're walking through the showcase, it can be a bit overwhelming to kind of pick out something memorable about those experiences because they all sort of blend together. So we wanted to kind of have something very simple that kind of gave a kind of a kitschy, um, nice emotional remembrance of what we were about as people were walking by or looking at the booth while kind of waiting to play. And we call that the We Like Weird campaign. So Summoner's Fate features all kinds of weird and interesting characters. We kind of have fun playing with the fantasy genre and thinking about like the fun creatures that live in there. This particular one here is our red imp. Let me see if I can pull him up on our website. Yeah. So here he is. He's just a little happy red imp bathing in a pool of lava geyser there. And we have funny things like, be happy as an imp bathing in fire. We like weird, Summoner's Fate. And there's all kinds of little cute things like that. My wife Kelly, who does our marketing creative ideas, came up with this really cool idea where we decided to have like little profiles of the different characters. So we have things like the Lich King. He likes to have what does he like? If you were going to date the Lich King, I guess it would be he likes what we say, soul food, like stealing life force from other people and hanging with his friends, and then he shows a clip of him summoning a whole horde of skeletons, because he's raising the dead. So funny things like that, very effective for getting people to sort of stop in their tracks and just kind of take a second look at you, which is what you want at a show like this, to just get your brand awareness out there. And so that went really, really well for us with that experience. I see Im Zakrella is on our stream today. Welcome, Im Zakrella. Pleasure to have you here with us. It's great to have you back. It's great to be back here. So, yeah, today I'm just sort of giving a bit of a recap of our PAX East experience, and then I'll be doing some dev work on our tool sets and kind of showing you guys some of the mechanics going into the upcoming client build. These are all the things that are going to be able to help us support our upcoming single player, which is the next major feature for Summoner's Fate. So let me think. Some other cool things about PAX. We got really creative with getting the crowd to come up and speak with us. So aside from your awesome screen, your demo, your signage, it's important to try and make a personal connection with the audience. And one of the ways that I would do that is as people were passing by, I come up to them really excited and say, like, hey, man, you guys want to throw some squirrels at orcs? And most of the time, they couldn't hear me because it's so loud there. So they'd be like, what? And then I would repeat myself, would you like to throw a squirrel at an orc? And my favorite response was always just like a definitive, yes, yes, I would. All right, step right up and play the game. Or or sometimes they'd come back with some witty banter and you sort of play off of that and tell them a little bit about the game before they would come and jump in. But my teammate Peter, he got really bold, and I really appreciated him because he had a lot of guts to do this. He took our We Like Weird campaign and sort of connected it to the spirit of why many of us enjoy these type of games. It's because fundamentally, in our soul, we are weird, and we want to express that weirdness. We want others to recognize us for that weirdness and not be ashamed of that weirdness. So he would kind of slink up to other people at the booth and just sort of say like, "Hey, you look weird. We like weird." And to my surprise, I mean, my first reaction when he told me this was that people are going to punch him in the face, and actually it was exact opposite. They complimented him and said, "Why, thank you. I appreciate that." It was just a very very opposite reaction to what I expected. It's sort of a sign of the geek culture rising and us not being ashamed of who we are anymore, and I really admired that. So I just wanted to call that out and say that that was something really unique and exciting that I got to experience, bringing him along. With me to showcase. And it's just a good thing too. Always experiment and try to find new ways to make a connection with the audience because it can be very surprising what works and what doesn't work. Let me see. I think I had one more key tip. Yeah, there's some data here on our sessions. So if you're interested in specifics about the number of traffic or sessions, I've got all this here. I won't go too much in detail. It's in the article if you guys want to take a look at that, though. Really helpful, though, if you're looking on setting up a demo. Yeah, here I talk about. Oh, here's some of the gifts. I should have shown these. Yeah, Archmage. Yeah, so likes long walks on the beach. Wormholes are weird. We like weird. That was our thing. Oh, and then the player testimonial. This was a cool tip. One of the benefits of the Indie Mega Booth is this mixer event, and you get to meet other people in the industry and just sort of chat in a very casual setting with drinks, and it's really fun. And one of the people I had the pleasure talking with was this PM, and PMs are just like the most brilliant folks in the industry. I always love chatting with PMs. One of my best friends in the industry is a PM, and just they're like the beautiful mind level brilliance. And so, yeah, this was Alex Engel, and he was sharing the idea that something cool we could do at the booth would be to take videos of people playing afterward and asking, with the permission, of course, and then getting their reactions. Like, what excited you about the game? What did you like? And then put it all together in a compilation, kind of showing that so that you can kind of let other people speak to what they like about the game. It helps other players connect with you because it's not just you selling it, it's other people really expressing the true emotion of what they felt. And it also helps you as a developer because you can kind of lean on what to focus on more. You know, when you think about your game and where to put your time in development, you want to focus on the strengths, the things that are revving people up and getting them excited. So that was something we did there, and you guys can again check that video out here. Um, just a really awesome experience. I'm glad we did that. So yeah, and here's Peter. He's just a fun dude, and we had a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to doing more events like this, and I'll keep you guys apprised. We have one coming up that I'll be able to announce soon, and I'm always looking for opportunities to meet our audience face to face and have a friendly conversation, show you the game in person, because it's fun to have that uh, personal connection, right? So that was our PAX East experience. Again, the article is up on Gamasutra. It's also on my Summoner's Fate forums. Just search for Summoner's Fate and PAX East on Google, and it'll come up in the top hit. So that's available for you guys to take a look at if you're interested. And all right, now let's get focused on sort of our development tasks and what we're going to be working on today. Normally, when I do these, I kind of focus on pure content development, and today I'm looking at doing a little bit more program work behind the scenes because in order to get the new content out, I've done a lot of changes to the tools and the way the data is structured. So I guess I'll start by speaking a little bit to that, like why I'm doing that, why that's necessary in terms of getting us ready for the single player experience. And then kind of dive into a little bit of finishing that work up, and then maybe at the end of the stream, if there's some time, I can kind of use that to program some of the new cards, or take an existing card and then apply it to the new format. So let's see, some other cool things on our forums here. If you follow along, you can go to the website forums, and then under game updates and news, I've got a section here where I always talk about the upcoming release, and that's right here, upcoming changes in next build. So we'll go here. And this is kind of like a long scrolling list. As I finish things, I add them to this list here so you can kind of get a sense of what's coming into the game as I'm working on it. We got some new cards, some AI fixes. Um, Players have been extremely helpful in the pre-release, and I'm so grateful for this. One of the things I do to help with our quality of the game is to allow the game to track bug reports. So when an error does happen, players can easily report by just pushing a button, and then that will send an update to my database and give me very clear repro steps on how to fix that bug. I've actually got a video on our YouTube channel that kind of talks about that, called Fixing Bugs Like a Boss, if you're interested in that whole tech pipeline of how that works. But yeah, we had a few key issues that came up in the last client release with regards to how the AI was working in the backworker, causing games to be frozen, that I have since fixed. And then we've got all kinds of balance changes coming and other cool things. And you guys can take a look at that here. So this is sort of the next milestone for Summoner's Fate. I'm going to get this client change out, get these issues fixed, address the balance that players have come up with, and then once all those tools and everything are wrapped up, I'll have everything in place to just crank out the single player content. And so then our next client following this should be the first iteration of single player that I'm hoping to have by the end of next month, which would be pretty awesome. Players are really excited about that. So let's see here. I'm going to go into next. So I'm going to talk about the tools. So let's get into the tools. Yes, you go here. I think I can just probably fire this up and maybe talk a little bit about what's been going on with the tools here. So this is my development engine. This is the D20 definitions editor. And one of the reasons it's very hard to make a game of this caliber is that I'm not just making one game, I'm technically making three. I've got the multiplayer game, I've got the single player game, which, let's face it, are two very distinctive types of games. And then I've also got the platform engine, the tools. Because this is not a game that I'm just making to release and then move on to our next title. This is a game that's going to have a long service of updates and expansions and a community around it. I want this to be like StarCraft. You know, that game's been running 20 plus years now, and I could easily see Summoner's Fate as a game people are playing 20 years from now, like a Magic the Gathering, right? It becomes a prolific hobby in a sense that you can continually, invest in it and be part of the community and take part in all the excitement with that. And help to also shape it and grow it over time. That's one of the other things I'm excited about. So building this tool was necessary to be able to manage the sheer level of content that I have created for this. So some of the things that this can do, this allows us to basically build all the content, our worlds, our maps, characters, everything. So like this is our world editor here, and you can see I've got like placeholder spawn points, and I can fire up a test game here, and this will actually run the game within the editor itself, and then I can test out, different things that are happening. So one of the things I was working on, equipment is very important to players, especially for the single player RPG aspect. And so I've been trying to find ways of making the equipment system more adaptable. One of the cool things I did recently, there's also this confusion sort of over the range attack, melee attack problem. So like these characters here, like the archer's got a range attack. But there's certain abilities that require triggers on melee, like we've got a force field that only breaks on a melee attack. So one of the cool things I've done recently is added this context. You can see now she has this knife she pulls out. Isn't that cool? And he's got one too. So when they're attacking at melee range, they actually have a different animation. That was kind of one of the cool adaptations that I added recently to kind of support the communication of what's happening as far as a melee versus a range attack. Maltros, welcome to the stream. It is a pleasure to have you here with us today, and we are currently discussing some of the upcoming changes in the new client version, and I'll be working on some of the tool changes necessary to get us to the place where we'll be really solid to build out the single player experience. So I'm so excited to have you here with us, and I'll be just kind of talking through the process and kind of showing some stuff, then diving into some production work, and then later in the stream, we're gonna maybe attempt to adapt the new models to some existing cards or make some new cards. So should be a lot of fun. Okay, so yeah, that was kind of just showing this. Now, I mentioned that the single player has had this challenge. I've talked about this in a few of the streams before. That with regards to developing this game, I've come to this conclusion that the initial model I had created to architect the game, while incredibly flexible in terms of what I can do with it, I found as I'm making single player levels and creating the triggers and rules necessary to really create rich, immersive encounters was not scalable. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'll kind of give you guys a walkthrough and sort of talk to the mechanics behind why this is the case. So we're going to look at something like a single player level here. I'm going to show you like one of our tutorial levels here. Like this is the first battle. And in this first level, you face off against some goblins, and it teaches you the mechanics of how to play, and you also get your first cards, right? Now, I'm going to explain why this becomes quickly not scalable in regards to developing this engine long term. So here I've got the map, right? This is the first thing where I can place the layout and things like that. Now, the next thing I would have is to define a scenario structure. All right, so a scenario defines sort of the base rules of everything that would go into creating that rule set. And this basically defines things like what the next level is, what the map is mapped to, what the starting rules are, etc. Okay, so that's now 2 points of data scattered in 2 different tables, maps and scenarios. All right, so now the player rules are stored in another table where I go into here and I go to players. and then I've got the PAX demo 1 rules here, and I've got all these triggered abilities that are mapped to that rule set. Okay, and then if I want to go and edit the triggered abilities, now I got to go into the triggered abilities table and find the um, rule state here and program the actions and see. So this is now connecting 4 different tables, and you can see what this is doing here, where I've got this triggered abilities table that has all these global abilities, and look at how long this is. I mean, there's probably over 300 items in that. 300 is a very large number, a very large and scary number to manage. And I've caught myself on these streams lately having a lot of trouble finding stuff in this list because I'll give it a name and then I'll try to remember what the name was. And then even still, I'm like trying to like alphabetically search for it and it becomes incredibly tedious. And what this is essentially doing is creating this vast, complex landscape of very scattered items. It's also very fragile because if I were to change a rule in this global table, it could potentially affect multitudes of other things elsewhere in the game. It's just not scalable. So that's the bottom line. Um, Another example would be a spell like let's look at something like a counter spell. So a counter spell is a cool spell where it creates a surprise trigger that counters next time a spell cast. Now, ideally, what I would love is the ability to just take and program this card right here in the spells table, because then I know I've got a one-to-one relationship with all the data and programming necessary to make this card right here in this one spot, and I know everything is there. That's the goal for what I want to be able to do with the data model. And right now, what I have to do is, create an effect, apply status surprise. So here's another table reference, status effect surprise. And then I go into the status effects, find the surprise for counterspell. And geez, where is that anyway? So down here. And then there's a triggered ability that does the actual counter, you see. And so once again, very disconnected, long chain of events, very complex and difficult to maintain. So that's one of the key reasons as I was making the single player and starting to program the encounters. And I think I showed this before in the single player, but one of the key things about the single player is these encounter systems where essentially it does the dice rolls for populating the dungeons with monsters in a procedural sense and assembling this sort of unique dynamic world. And all of these things disconnected like that, scattered, it just creates a very difficult to manage system. So I've been working very hard to really hone in on what it's going to take to make an optimal system. And I'm at the point now where it's very, very close. And that's why I'll actually be working on some of the finishing touches to that today. And then we can kind of sort of test out how that's going to work. So, yeah, that's kind of the long-winded explanation of where we're at. Let's see now. Let me pull my notes here. This is my long list of changes. I have this habit of making lists. I'm a very like task-driven person, and I like to make lists. And the interesting thing about programming is you can see how this is. Look at this, more to do. As I work, I often expand the work I have to do. I'll be working, I'll find a bug, or I'll see an opportunity for improvement, and I'll just like, oh, I need to do that too. So the way kind of programming and development works is that you start off with these few simple assumptions, and then it starts to unfold. And I like to think of it like an accordion, where it's like it seems small at first. You're completing the task, but then you go, oh wait, I could do this. Expands a little bit. I could do this. Expands a little bit, and then it kind of creates these tangents where it sprouts another accordion from the point on the accordion you're working for, and there's another little accordion growing like this in a different area. And so the management of that becomes like this big spider web matrix that just constantly grows. I often feel as I work that the work becomes longer as opposed to getting shorter. So sometimes what I have to do is table things. So if I can delegate something away, I'll go into one of my tables. Like I've got these giant lists here, spreadsheets I keep on the cloud to kind of keep track of things. Or if a player suggests something, I think that's a really cool thing, I want to get to that, I'll put it on our backlog so I can come back to it later. But especially when there's a client release coming up, I always like to try and get as much as I can in there because it's just great to have it in the client. Client updates are a lot more complex than doing a DLC update because I've got to go through the approval, review processes, and importantly, I have to make sure all the bugs and stuff are fixed because the process of correcting those again is another whole update process. So I try to get as much as I can in there, and you can see this is a long list of stuff I've got in there. Um, But right now, what I'm trying to do is get it to where I can complete the nested ability editing. Okay, so let me try to explain how what that means exactly. Um, what I want to be able to do is, if I was in this counter spell here, I want to be able to create everything necessary to make this counter spell directly from within this spell itself. And so to that end, I've created a system now where I can create and develop um, nested definitions within a definition, sort of like a dream within a dream, right? If you guys have seen that one. So if I go into the abilities here, this is sort of the new piece that's been added. And I need to change this because really what this is should be called is nested status effects. I can go into here now and create a new ability and edit, and this will take me to a subpanel. And this is now a completely customized status effect editor panel that will allow me to construct and edit and adapt status effects from within here. And I can do the same thing with our triggered abilities. So now I can create a new triggered ability, and you can see here this is not a global stored one, this is nested. Now I can go and edit this. And you can see how this goes through tiers, and I can just go back, and now I'm in the original spell. So versus having to navigate through multiple tiers of tables, everything is now self-contained within a single spell, and any changes I make only affect that spell, and it makes the development process much, much easier, as you can see there. All right, now where I've left off on this, I had hoped to have been completed with it by the time I got to the stream, and part of me was debating pushing off the stream for another week, but I felt it had been 2 weeks. I hadn't connected with you guys in a while, so I thought, you know what, let's just start the stream off a little bit different. I'll kind of talk more to some of the, underlying tasks that go into this, and I hope you find it interesting and kind of like how the process works here, and just sort of do my work and kind of go from there and see how this takes a turn. If you guys have any questions on what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, please feel free to ask, and I will respond. All right, so I've got this Excel document here, and what I've been doing over the last yesterday and the day before that has been preparing a new naming convention for the properties. So why do I do this, right? Well, with anything service-wise like Summoner's Fate, um, data is a very, very important resource because data responds to both time and money, and also user experience, right? When you think about the fastest way to get into a game, right? When you make updates to a game or you need to download or sync your data from the cloud, data has to be transferred back and forth. And sometimes with the way the internet speed works in this day and age, we think that data is just sort of free and inexhaustible and there's no cost to it. It's just like, oh, no big deal. It can be 2 GB, who cares? But there really actually is several costs involved in this. I look at a lot of modern games where they have updates and the updates are 2 GB, and maybe you want to just hop on for a quick match and you get into this wall block where it's like, I haven't played in a month and now there's this 2 gig update. And 2 gig updates are fast, but it can still take up to a half hour to download, install, verify the client, and it creates a very broken experience. And that's something I don't want for Summoner's Fate. Um, so finding ways to minimize the amount of data transfer is very important. The other key thing is that there's a real cost as far as maintaining a service in regards to um, having data stored in the cloud and syncing that data back and forth, right? So if you think even like a mass game, like a free-to-play game, like a Hearthstone or Magic Online, right? You've got all your saved decks, your player profile, your settings, right? Well, all those things have to be synced back to your client device every time you go log in from the cloud. And those data syncs have a small but minute cost. I mean, I'm sure it's something like 0.0001% of a of a cent to do a single transaction. But when you're talking about the massive amount of players that engage in those services, those fractions of pennies add up very quickly into very expensive maintenance costs. So yeah, data has a real cost, and that's why a lot of these games will have kind of hard limitations on the number of synced decks you can have within the game or the number of stored things in the cloud, because even though it seems like there's just free and unlimited storage, all those transactions in aggregate happening all the time has a real cost. And particularly being an indie, my goal is I have to maintain as low a cost as possible because we're a very small studio. We don't have the resources of larger teams, and so anywhere where we can optimize and improve our efficiency in regards to data storage not only creates a better user experience, it also helps us be able to maintain our service more cost effectively. So when I started doing the nesting of these abilities, normally they're stored within just a SQLite table that would track all the different properties. And so there's not really a cost to the naming conventions of the properties because they're sort of they're listed once and then they're stored in this table. But when we talk about nesting abilities, essentially what I need to do, instead of storing them within subtables, what I do is I encode the definition as a single string. So what once was a sort of defined table. In fact, you know what? Maybe I'll give an example of how this looks so it kind of is a little more clear. So I'll show you our definitions table from a pure data point of view, right? So if I go into, let's look at we'll look at a status effect here. Modify table. All right. So here's a bunch of different properties that are stored in the table, right? These are the different triggers, abilities, the sound effects. Like I have all these different properties. So there's no cost for names within this table because they're all defined once. And then in the actual table, if I were to go to browse status effects right now, you can see that these are just sort of all listed in columns. So the name is only used once at the top, and then the rest of these are just sort of comma delimited values that denote all the definitions. I find this to be very amazing and fascinating, by the way. When you think about what your content is, it's a series of encoded numbers. This kind of sort of looks like the Matrix, right? Like looking at a bunch of zeros and ones and commas and numbers, and it looks almost nonsensical. I mean, there's a few recognizable things like, oh, okay, I can read what freeze trap is, but I don't necessarily know what that maps to. Like, oh, in this case, it's an animation. But yeah, this is essentially what the data looks like, and so I pride myself very much on creating a very optimal experience to condense this to as small a footprint as possible, which is why I've designed the data structure in this way, because this condenses what could be potentially megabytes worth of data to mere kilobytes or smaller, and that's why when I go to update the Summoner's Fate client or DLC, it literally takes like a half a second to get all the new definitions and load them because they're that small a footprint. Anyway, so the reason I'm looking at renaming these properties is because once I start nesting them, I can no longer encode them as just pure numbers. They have to be encoded as complete definitions. So within an actual spell, when I nest the ability, it will have to repeat all these property names whenever they're used. And that can quickly balloon the size of data because now I'm talking about adding all these characters at the top each time I add a new ability. And so you got to think in terms of like exponential scale and growth, right? It's very easy when you're building just one, but when you're talking about, like in my case, I want hundreds of cards. Those hundreds of cards multiplies into thousands, tens of thousands of other abilities, and then multiplying tens of thousands and by all the number of pieces of data, you've got hundreds of thousands of pieces of data, and you can see how that quickly expands into a potentially very verbose and large data set. And I do not want to have a situation where a year or two from now, when we're updating the content for Summoner's Fate, it takes you, a half hour to update the game. Like that would be bad. So anything I can do to future-proof it is very important, and that's why I take my time with these things because I'm not just looking for the immediate win. I'm looking for the long-term experience of what's best for the game, the platform, the product, and really for you guys because you're the ones who are going to have those download times. And if I think there's a major difference in a snappy, I can jump in and play right away versus oh no, I've got to wait. Even if it's 5 minutes, I don't want to wait 5 minutes. So that's why I do these things. All right. So anyway, last night I had gotten through pretty far in this process. You can see I've got my little checklist of things I had completed here. And I'm just about on the final cusp of renaming all these different properties. And so right now I've kind of sort of a boring, meaningless task, but not meaningless, meaningle task. not the most exciting thing to program, but I'm on the final crux of renaming. I've got a few of these properties here that I've been deciding about what to do with. Um, I think I've joked before in the stream about the whole notion that naming things is one of the biggest headaches of programming. And you would think that that sounds strange, right? Like why would naming stuff be so important to the process of programming? But it's actually one of the most important things a programmer does is decide how to name things. And the reasoning behind that is that essentially what programming really is um, is the art of naming stuff. I know that sounds strange, but um, it's the ability to describe things in a way that the computer ultimately understands in the most like direct and clear way possible, and also so that other people, including your future self, can then read and understand what it is that you did here. So when you go back and look at it, you can understand it. So always this cost of optimization versus how do I name it so it's clear and I understand it later, right? Because zeros and ones are great for the computer and for data optimization, but they're bad for people like me that have to go and look at that later and trying to figure out what the heck that all means. So in this case here, I've created like a little map for myself. And as I've gone through and renamed some of these properties, I have been very diligent about commenting those interchanges so I can understand what these encodings mean in the future. But you can look at some of the different things here, like the word triggered abilities condensed down to a two-character TA, and what that does for data optimization, right? Like how much of a reduction that's like about a tenth of the size of what this was before. So you're talking about saving a 10x factor over the scalability of hundreds of thousands of different iterations of this, and that's why this is so important because I'm reducing our potential sizes by multitudes of factors. All right. So enough explanation. I've got to go and fix this now. So my next goal are to rename some of these properties within the tables so that I can finalize this structure, lock it down, and actually start making some stuff with this. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on these orange ones here and get this taken care of. All right, so abilities is one of them. I want to change that to be called nested status effects. So I'm going to go into all these things here, and I'm going to find the property where it says abilities, and change this to be called nested status effect, or NSE. That's my encoding for that, so I'm going to understand it. And then I'm going to also change this label here, just so I'm clear about what this means. How do I do that? There's this label. Is this not a component? Oh, okay, I see this. That's actually just a title. Oh, it's in here. Okay. This should be called nested status effects. There we go. Nested. There we go. That's really what these things are here. So that's my first change. Okay, and then I'm going to change my status effects. Do I have those up here somewhere? No, I don't. Triggered ability is going to be called TA. So yeah, seems boring what I'm doing now, but this is the kind of stuff that's going to cost or greatly improve the data sets later in the future. Okay, so we got that. Okay, now let's see, I've saved that, and then I got to go into the status effect editor panel. I have a bunch of these panels I got to go edit. Okay, so triggered abilities will be TA. Status effects will be SE. I'm going to get rid of this triggers because I'm going to use this other list I have instead. So this can go. All right. Let's see. Nested status effects. Good. So this needs to be called nested status effect. NSE. Is that how I called it? Let me make sure I named it right. Yeah, capital E. Okay, good. All right. Anything else hiding in here that I didn't change it? I think that's good for that one. All right. Now the triggered ability editor. All right. And I will go into this guy here, and I want to change, what does he have? I don't know if there's anything in here I need to change. This looks like it's all okay. All right, that's fine for this one. Let's go into unit editor panel. Yeah, so this is cool. Like I'm editing the editor. And it's amazing how over time I've come to like restructure and change and redo the layout of this thing. It's just crazy. Okay, so this is called, I don't know why that's called that. Let's change this back to, this is status effects is really what this is. You know, abilities is probably an appropriate word. That's not a big deal. Let's leave this as, let's change this to SE. Okay, this is triggered abilities, TA. Okay, and now I've got a few more to change like that. I've got the tile editor panel. This is again SE. Trigger abilities is TA. Okay. And then if I go into placeable editor panel, same thing. Renaming all this stuff. You will be called SE for status effects, and you will be called TA for triggered abilities. Okay, and then we've got decos. I think we're getting close now. Properties TA, and you will be SEs. Okay, so that's good. Now I've renamed all of the properties I can think of there. Let me see if there's any more panels I missed. Flip through them. Data, deck editor, no, we did decos. Oh, equipment, yeah, that one's another one. I think that's got the same things. Okay. So again, here this will be called TA. And status effects will be SE. Okay, good to go there. And next thing will be, let's see. Okay, map editor panel. Node editor panel. Particle, placeable. We did. Procedural. Is there anything in here? Nope, that looks okay. Scenario editor panel is going to have something here. And I actually want to change one of these things in here. Nope, scenario editor panel is, oh, let me think here. Do I have triggered abilities in here? No. We did spells, we did status, targeting, tile, trait, triggered. Okay, now the map editor panel has a status effects nested in it. Okay, rules. Okay, let's go into here. So this is currently a triggers, and I want to change this to a swap triggered. What's the thing I want here? Triggered ability panel. Yes. That one. There we go. That's good. I'm going to call this TA here as well. Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay, that looks good. All right, so I've done the renaming inside the editor as best as I can tell. Let me make sure I got all the ones I was going to change. So we had abilities is now nested status effect. There's only 2 panels that have that. We've got the status effects we renamed to SE. We named the triggered abilities to TA. I deprecated the triggers that was in there before. And traits I'm just going to keep as it is. Attributes will eventually go away, and I'll explain why. I'm planning to merge that into traits, so there's just 1 panel instead of 2. Okay, and I think that's good there. Okay, so now that's done. And this is where there's a lot of touch points. So the editor panel has been renamed, but it's currently desynced with everything else. So now I need to change the database and then the code so that all 3 things are in synchronization with each other. So let's go into the definitions now. I'm going to change some table names so that they're synchronous. The editor panels are really cool the way I built them. They're all designed to just match one-to-one with columns in the database based on their naming convention. So as long as the names are consistent, it can quickly save and edit data between things. I have a phone call. One moment. Let me just mute this. unless it's an emergency. Scam likely, definitely not an emergency. Okay. All right, and let's go ahead and go through my different things here. So decos I know are modified, so let's go into there. All right, so we changed status effects to be called SE. And I've got triggered abilities is now TA. Good. Okay, anything else changed here? Nope, that's good. Okay, so let's keep moving on the list. We've got equipment. We did change some stuff in there, right? We've got SE for status effect, and we've got the triggered abilities will be TA. Okay. Excellent. Interesting. Action context. Ooh, I had not changed this here. That is a I need to change this. And also action effects should not be in this table anymore. Oh wow. Now that I'm seeing this here, this is a big red flag for Ross. Okay, AC. I gotta fix that. I hadn't changed that yesterday, and I just caught that. Anything else in here that looks like a warning sign for me? Oh, I should probably talk about our equipment changes today too. Some of the changes I've done with equipment. I think I promised that in Discord yesterday. We'll talk about equipment because there is a lot of work and consideration I've done to equipment in this release coming out that will have implications for single player. Okay, let me change this, and then action effects I feel like I don't need. Let me go and check this out real quick. Um, while I've got it in my freshman mind, I'm going to go to the equipment editor panel. Okay, and I believe there should be something here called action context. There is. Interesting. Refactor, rename. You shall now be called AC. I like it so. Good. That should take care of that. Now, action effects. Is there an action effects editor in that panel? I was not aware I could edit action effects within the equipment. Apparently I can. Is there a reason I would do that? Huh. Now I'm looking at this and trying to figure out why I've got this in here in the first place. Almost as if I had anticipated the idea of editing equipment action effects directly within them. I don't think that I do. I'm pretty sure that the way I do my equipment is that everything is now inherited from existing abilities versus programmed directly within the ability itself. This might be a legacy linger over thing from an old structure of doing it. Trying to think if there would even be a benefit to doing it this way in here directly. Well, I suppose I'll keep it for now, but if I'm going to keep it for now, I'm going to also rename it, so let's fix that. This needs to be called AE to be consistent with the new names. AE, action effects, good. Okay, oh, yeah, we'll come back to the trigger abilities here. We're not going to change that just yet. All right, let's go back to equipment, modify table. So we have, did I change AE here already? Action effects. Okay. Good to go. Done. Okay. Let's write these current changes so far. And let me go into that editor panel for equipment again and just change those names. Equipment editor panel. Okay, so this should be called AC for action context, and you'll be AE for action effects. Done. Save. Now, moving along, we're editing the names in the table still. So we did equipment. Okay, these did not change. This did not change. Maps. Maps does not change because it's a nested ability. Placeables does have changes, so this needs to be called SE for status effects. TA for triggered abilities. Good. Okay, placeables, players, no change, property map scenarios. I don't remember, I don't think there's anything that changed in scenarios yet. I will have to go through and rename some of these properties here. In fact, I may come up with some ideas for those. Yeah, okay, go back to that. Spells definitely has changes. So let's go into there. Where are you guys. TA for triggered abilities. And we have ability should now be called nested status effect. Good. Okay. This should have a default of that. Oh man, data is one of the just largest challenges. Managing data. Never thought I would spend so much time on this, but you've really got to scrutinize it. Some of the best engineers in the AAA industry focus entirely on data architecture and how to maximize this kind of stuff. I sometimes wish I could talk to one of those folks and just get their opinion. Like, I don't know. I like to think these optimizations I'm making are going to have long-reaching impacts. They could tell me like, yeah, you're just blowing smoke. It's sixes. Don't worry about the naming conventions. Or they could be like, why aren't you using a standard format? I don't know. That's part of the fun of this. I don't necessarily know. I sort of take educated guesses based off what I am aware of these things. A lot of folks will use a standard data format like a JSON. I find JSON files to be incredibly verbose, as opposed to what I can do with mine. I mean, like we're talking multitudes smaller in terms of data storage. But I don't know. I'm getting pluses and minuses by condensing my data in the way that I'm coding it now, and possibly shooting myself in the foot in the future. I'm not entirely sure, but my gut tells me this is the right move for making this the best it can be long term. Okay, so we were on spells, as I recall. Let me just make sure I changed all those. Yes. All right. And let's see. Spells and status effects. So now we're going to look at the status effects here. Okay, so we've got trigger abilities becomes TA. We've got our status effects becomes SE. And then abilities will become nested status effects. Okay, so that relationship's complete. Now we've got teams. Nothing changes there. Test settings. Tiles has changes. Comes SE. I'm not super happy about the fact that these other names are being changed to less readable formats, but I have to be consistent because of the way that these definitions inherit from each other. That'll become apparent when I start showing you the code in the next step, where I actually change the code references to these data. You're going to get a very inside look at how this whole process works. Let's see if there's anything else. That's all good. Okay. Some of the properties I haven't changed names for, and the reason for that is I want to maintain the readability. Like, I'll give you some examples here where like anim cast, anim status, or some of these other ones, GFX icon. I have standard naming conventions for these, and these are also very hard to encode in a recognizable symbol that's unique. But these are used much less likely than things I know are used all the time, like triggered abilities are used all the time. And triggered abilities is also a very long word. So condensing that to a two-character is a much greater win. Whereas I'll take the hit on something like SFX cast because it's less used and it's going to have a name attached to it anyway. So the savings there is less important. Okay, so triggered abilities. Did we do that yet? I'm trying to remember now. I lost my place. It looks like I did. Okay, good. All right. Now let's see. And did we do placeables? I feel like I'm. Yeah, we did. Okay. All right. So we did trigger abilities. Is that all of them now? We may have done them all. Was there anything else that comes after T in my list? Type lists are all fine. Types are all fine. Oh, the units. Yeah, there we go. That's the last one. Okay, so TA, SE. Okay. SFX death. The rest of these are okay. Units will not be nested definition. I will always create a global definition of characters. Just way too verbose to try and store that nested. Okay. I think that's everything here. We're going to write our changes to database. I'm sure we'll have errors. That's the nature of this process, and we'll catch those when we go through and test this. Okay, so now I've completed the first level of renaming convention here, which is the editor and all that. So I'm just going to tag that this one here has been done. We'll give that a 1 just so I can keep track. Status effects have all been renamed in the editor and the table here. Triggered abilities have been renamed. Oh, you know what we forgot to do? We forgot to deprecate those triggers and those other properties. Let me go in there and I think it was just status effects that had it. I don't want to have that old triggers table anymore. We're going to get rid of that. Goodbye. Yes. Yeah, that was one of my earlier experiments with creating nested triggers, but I've decided to keep everything in just one global list. All right. Yeah. So another struggle that I have, or that I think just engineers or programmers in general have, is the balance of global and local variables, I guess, or global resources and non-global resources. Um, as a person who is naturally inclined to create very efficient systems, like I have always been a tool builder because I don't like to do tasks that are meaningless, and I also don't like having barriers to rapidly expressing myself and my creativity and design and rapidly creating design. So um, having tools empowers the ability to rapidly create things and also know that they're going to work because they're based on solid principles that have been tested, tried and true over time. But in my original system I kind of showed you earlier, you saw that the way that worked was that everything was connecting to these various tables, right? I have all these different tables, and sort of the purpose for that was so that things could be reusable, like status effects. Let's talk about, poison. Lots of things cause poison, right? But I only want to have to program the poison logic once. Could you imagine having to program poison, the effects and the abilities for that uniquely every time you had a poison character? Let's say we have 20 poison characters, or we want to add a new one, okay? And let's say that the rules for poison change. Like, we've had some discussion about poison taking damage at the end of turn instead of the start. I would have to then know all 20 of those things and then go and edit each one manually. And what if I missed one? Now we have a problem where the poison doesn't function the same for one character versus another. That's a situation where globalization is really bad because if all things work the same way, you want them to all use the same resource and you want to change that resource in one place. And once that resource is built, you don't want to change it. You want to rely on it. And that's why with a lot of our cards and characters, when I go to add things like, oh, let's create a new character, like what was one of the ones we did earlier was like the Chimera. The Chimera didn't have any new powers. He had poison, he had pierce, he had something else, and those were all abilities we had already programmed. And all I had to do was basically just stick them onto him, and I knew he would work because those abilities were tried and true and tested and not changing. Um, that's a case where global storage of data and information is very powerful. Where it's not powerful is in the case I had showed you before, like that counterspell, where the only thing counterspell is using is its own stuff, and that's the only spell using it. And by throwing it into the global list, I've now made the global list far more verbose, and I've created multiple touch points in which, if I need to edit counterspell, I could potentially break it because it's not one of its nodes. That's kind of the breadcrumbs that assemble it is now broken. That's a case where globalization is really bad. I want to have encapsulation more. So one of the goals or the ideas of this is to create a harmony between global and local things. So I have the power to leverage global things when appropriate, but also the power to um, encapsulate when it makes sense to do so. And so that was one of the major changes in the editor is that but prior these lists were just had the ability to edit global things. Like if I want to add a new status effect rule here, there I've added it. It's from the global list. But if I want to create a new one, um, then I can also do that too by clicking on here and now creating a new one. I think this list here actually does both. This one will let you create, like this is the global poison, and if I want to make a new one, I can do it here. See, now I've got a nested one. So these lists actually support both global and inline defined abilities, giving the most versatile of development options going forward. So I talked about how this also has the benefit of being able to produce content more rapidly. Yes, I have taken a hit in terms of development. I probably could have produced an extra 10 or 20 cards over the last week, and I chose to invest in this instead. But I look at the long-term investment reward gain. By doing this, I will now be able to produce cards probably twice as fast as I had done in the past, which means we're going to be getting more content. And as time goes on, that's going to result in multitudes more content being developed than I could have done before in the old pace. So that's another benefit or reason why I take the time to make these kind of decisions um, in our development process. All right, so let's get out of here. I don't want to change that. All right, so I was going through here and okay, so I just removed that trigger thing. Was there anybody else that used that trigger thing? I think yeah, we got rid of all those. So this is actually done. We don't have to do anything. No, actually no, I have to go and delete in the code too. So let's leave it there. One, okay. Abilities we changed, status effects we changed, and trigger abilities we changed. So these are all ones now. All right, so I did that because there's, like I said, there's multiple phases to the renaming process. The database, the instance names, and the editor variable components itself, and then now the code and the data structure. This is what's going to tie everything together in a harmony that all works. All right, so now we're going to do some actual code changes. I guess we'll start by deprecating triggers. Um, File, close everything, and let's get a nice clean slate here. So what I need to do is search for dot triggers, which was his old name, and I'll be looking at the definitions here. So here is where I had been creating the triggers, and yes. So you see I've got triggers and triggered abilities. These basically function the same. It was just a matter of how these lists were getting split between each other. So what I'm going to do here is get rid of the triggers list here. This will no longer be used. We're going to have everything encapsulated in this singular list here instead. Okay, and then let me make sure I saw everything else this was doing so I can make sure it all looks cleaned up. There's no variables being defined here. Trigger ability, yes. Push trigger def. Yes, okay. So this can be going away. Goodbye. Delete that. And let's see. Yeah, this triggers is now going to be TA inside of here. So this is trigger abilities. Okay. And in def scenario, interesting. This will be TA. Oh, and I'm just thinking to myself, this list no longer is valid. I've got to go and get that from the other one. Where did I find that before? It was under, what was the thing I just changed? Let's take a look at this. Attribute holder. I need to go into attribute holder. Okay. This is an interesting challenge, by the way, to talk as I'm doing this kind of stuff. Normally, there's a lot of thought process going on in my head with what I have to do, and I'm sort of trying to keep a mental model of what I'm trying to do while also describing it. So just appreciate there's a there's a cognitive struggle there. If I'm being unclear, just please let me know, and I will try to slow down. Okay. Yes, I need this is what I need instead, and I'm gonna put that in def scenarios because this is gonna have a structure that is now mimicking this here instead. Okay, and what's this nested ID? Why is this not defined here? That's interesting. I'm trying to think if that's even necessary in this case. This is not needed here. Data ID is string. Yeah, okay, where is this getting from? I'm just making that function exposed so I can replicate the data there because it was non-defined here. And triggered abilities, triggers. Interesting. What do we have this thing here called? Triggered ability defs is what we were using here in def attribute holder. That's how we were defining that. Let's rename this. Triggered ability defs, so they are consistent. Okay, now is everything all yellows? Good. That's what I wanted to see. We still have some reds. That's not good. Amplitude is not defined. I don't like that. This could be just a 1. Let's just put a var amplitude as 1. And from table also is interesting. Interesting, indeed. String equals, I'm trying to think what I want from table to be here. What is this? This table here is going to be the scenarios. No. Types dot maps. Okay. It's a little complicated what I'm doing here. I'm trying to make this code logic valid here for the scenarios. But there's some other pieces that maps from the other def attribute holder that aren't inherited here because this does not inherit from attribute holder. So it's a little strange. But I think that's good. I think this will work. Get rid of that. Those yellows should go away now. Yeah. Okay. Looks like we didn't have I defined, so let's do var I int there. Okay. Now everything's kosher there. Good. Okay. Wow, that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Okay. Malatros, still here, by the way. I'm just listening. Excellent. Indeed. Yeah, this is not necessarily the most exciting thing I've made here on the streams, but I hope there's some value in it being just sharing some of the understanding of the process that goes into this. If anything, maybe my voice is just kind of droning on like this is relaxing or meditative to whatever you guys are currently doing right now. I hope I can at least provide that level of pleasure and excitement. Yeah, yeah. Plus, it's good too. It's good just to have someone there to, you know, be able to inquire if I've got need feedback from you guys or vice versa. You've got questions. It's kind of cool. We are connected right now. We are working together. You guys may be doing your own work right now, and we are sharing our experience out there in the world, doing our things together. And it's nice to have that connection. Okay. So I'm trying to remember what I was doing now. I believe it was to eliminate that triggers, and I think I've done that now. Oh no, there's still something in here. Triggers. You need to be called TA now. You have TAs instead. Okay. All right, let me just take a look at what I did here. This, okay. Game configuration, okay. Okay, good. Can I put that in? Action effects. This was to fix that equipment editor context, which I did. Okay, that's good. This is a cool tool. This is called the source tree. It is a way, man, it's what's amazing is that the first game I did, Hero Mages, I did not use a tool like this. There was no versioning control. I would manually search and replace using Dreamweaver to make global cone changes. I did not have the luxury of a thing that would automatically refactor or rename, and I certainly had nothing that kept track of my changes. This is by far the most essential tool to any developer. If you're not using a repository versioning control, you are working at like a tenth of the productivity you could be. So you see these red things here. If you're not familiar with development, this is all the things I got rid of. The green's what I changed. This thing keeps a historical log of everything you've done in the game forever. And it comes at almost no cost because code changes are minuscule and these data changes are small. So you can keep a history of your entire project from the beginning of its lifespan. And what's awesome about that is when you introduce bugs, you can go back in time and re-branch off of it and recreate the situation and figure out exactly which line of code broke your thing or which code fixes the thing. Yes, it is. It is by far the most useful tool a developer has in any language. Any programming language can use a source tree or a repo tool like this. So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of just doing my own little code review in my head to make sure that what I did looks correct, just verifying the work. So here I see I changed triggers to triggerability defs to be consistent in image. I replaced the triggers with the new logic for doing a triggered abilities list instead. Yes, and let's put that in there. Triggered abilities, triggered abilities. Interesting. Oh, okay. Ooh, interesting. I see something here that's not correct. See, that's why it's cool to look at this stuff. Well, first of all, I'm just going to name this triggered abilities to be consistent. But the other one is this problem here. This triggered ability is where to go. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Status. Where's that status one? Yeah, you don't belong here. You were supposed to go away. This guy is actually going to go here. We're getting rid of that. Go away. Okay. So now that's good to go. So now we've gotten rid of all the triggers references. Good. Okay. So this is done now. So we've deprecated that. That's complete. Okay. So now we're going to look for the abilities and change those to be NSE. So let's search for dot abilities. And ooh, definitions is where I need to look. This is nice to be able to search and identify a particular location. In this case, I know it's the definitions editor I've got to change. Oh, you know what? I didn't finish that other thing. I need to go into the code for status effect editor panel. I didn't do this yet. So somewhere in here there's a triggers. There it is. I gotta get rid of that. I forgot this part of the code. There's two parts of the code. There's the definition part of the code, and then there's the editor part of the code. Both have to be cleaned up. So that goes away now. See, here's where I define all the columns that get written to the database. See, I've got my goofy name convention here. I can see if I can remember. This is isBuff, isDebuff. What's CS? See, I can't remember what that one was. Action context, equipment context. I forget what CS was. I think I got my chart. What is the CS? Stackable. Oh, Ken stack. Yeah, okay. That one's a little hard to remember. Okay, let me get rid of that. Okay, so he's gone now. And then I need to do the same thing for the scenario Azure module. We need to get rid of. Actually, we're not going to get rid of it. We're going to. This one actually is going to change to a TA, and then I also have to change this list here to something else. It's going to be that one. And then I need to get rid of that old list. Interesting though. I do want to look at this here and see. Is there any reason I need to have this? Interesting. Okay. Triggers data editor list. I think this can go now. Goodbye. Okay. Okay. All right, this thing is forever gone. We don't need that anymore. We're not going to use it that way. Delete that. Okay. Save that. Okay, so I've got the, that's now TA instead. Good. Okay. Yeah, see some of these rules, some of these labels are kind of long here. I might go and change those. I'm less concerned about scenarios because there won't be as many of these prevalent per se. Really, it's the encoding of those encounters that will be important, and those will be all stored globally, so that will be less of a concern. All right, scenario editor module. Okay, so now I can go back and say, yep, that's gone. Good. Why do I have two semicolons there? Status effect error panel. What did I do here? Okay. Good and okay, good. All right, so that's good now. All right, now back to what I was doing here, which was going to change the abilities. All right, so let's do that again. Let's close everything down and start over. Search for abilities. All right, here we go. Definitions. That's what I wanted to see right here. Okay. Okay, so what we need to do here is change this to nested status effects. Data.nested status effects. Nested status effects. Nested status effects. And delete that. Okay, good. Good. That's changed. All right, now. All right. Ability defs, I want to change that too as well. Nested status effect defs. Make no confusion of what that is. I'm going to change this to nested status effect data strings. Good. Nested status effect data. Okay. All right, now you change these ability defs too. Well, we'll come back to that. Let's put a note about that somewhere. Change all ability defs to nested status effect defs. All right, just want to be clear about what those things are. Okay. Def defaults. Okay, go in here. This should now be called nested status effect. Okay, good. Now, let's search for ability. I'm just going to search for that, just so it'll be a more conclusive search. Definitions. Oh boy, there's a lot more things in here. Let's see. Okay. You need to be called that, that, that. This is a really weird structure I created here. One of the weirder things I've created is the weird recursive way that these definitions can be able to, like, I don't know how to describe it, but they can inherit and encapsulate each other, and they can also like um, mutate each other in weird ways with the nested stuff. But this is a way that the nested status effects can exist in a sort of floating bubble that can be isolated from all the other definition code and be accessible just to what the context of which it's created in. But I gotta be very careful. The names have to be matched exactly. This is sort of a more fragile code thing because since I'm using non-hard type values, I'm using pure data that's being converted from strings. The names have to match one-to-one with the hard typed code. So it's a little unnerving to make changes like this, but it needs to be done. So let's rerun the search here and make sure I got all those things. I don't care what's in this folder. It's only what's in this definitions folder that matters. Yeah. Um, Yeah, this is basically allowing it to, like, when it goes and finds all the data, it can transfer those status effect data to all the nested things within inside of themselves. It's very complex. All right. Okay, add triggered abilities. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's take a look what's going on here. This is not a problem. This needs to be changed for sure. Okay. That's, I think I already handled this. Yes. I already added that fix. Okay. Determine parent definition. Okay, let's get rid of this comment. Okay. This is just ability description, and this one here is, looks like ability description as well. What's going on here? I don't know if I like this. This is scaring me. Oh, okay. That's okay. That's not part of what we were doing with the other thing. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's search this again. That's fine. This is fine. That's fine. Those are fine. That's fine. Okay, good. All right, now let's make sure they're all named correctly here. So here's where I changed def action. Okay, this used to be ability defs. Now it's nested status ability defs. Good. This is a much clearer version of what that actually means for me versus saying ability. It just gives a weird, different, non-referable name. All right. Yep. 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 Yeah, we changed this to be that. Yeah, this looks good. Good. That's good. Those are all renamed correctly. Check that off the list. This is correct. Scenario. Yep. And def status effect. Nested ability defs. Okay, cool. So that's done. Getting very close here to testing. That one's done. All right, looks like we've just got to rename status effects and triggered abilities. These ones should hopefully be a little easier. Oh, but I'm not done with abilities. We didn't change it in the other. I forget there's two packages we need to change it in. The other one is the definition editor package. So let's go into here. Yeah, see, Ross didn't change it here. Yeah, change it here too. Okay, nested status effects. Good. Rerun the search. I believe it's just the editor panels. Let's see here. So we've got status effect editor panel. Okay, this should be refactor renamed to being called nested stat abilities. That's changed. Good. Research again. Definition editor. What else still has abilities in it? Just this. Okay, that's fine. Good. Okay. Let's make sure that's clear that this is nested status effects. Okay. I like to try and clean things up a little if I can. And just cleaning it up a little bit. Okay, that's done. Now, there is another property I need to change in one of these things, and that is dun, 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 dun. Which one is it? This thing here. I need to make it so that this guy also functions as a dual panel list, I believe. This is just so it'll store data consistent and support the parameters I can throw into it. Default status list separator. Interesting. Okay. I wonder if it needs that, but keep that as it is. Let's see. Interesting. If it's stored as a dual list, does it need to have that? Oh dear, Ross, what have you gotten yourself into here? This is a problem. This is a major problem if I do this. One of the things that's a little confusing to explain, but there's difference in these types of lists. Subtle differences in how they get encoded. I'll try to explain. So this list can't support parameters. It literally is just creation of unique status abilities. They don't have amplitudes to them, and it will result in these things getting encoded differently. I'm trying to debate. I've been struggling with this all morning, trying to make a decision about whether I want to have these things encode similar. Um, but here I can create a status effect, and I can give it an amplitude value, so I can control what the variable number is in here very easily by giving it a number value. And with this one, I can't. They're literally just status effects, and they'll have whatever number is hard coded into them, which may be okay given that if I'm doing it this way, because there's maybe this. I don't know that I have to worry about the amplitude carrying into these. You know what? I'm gonna keep that as it was. I don't want to change that. I think we're gonna keep it because that would entail changing all kinds of other stuff I don't want to change. Discard that. All right. Yeah, these are very tough decisions because they have vast effect on the future of this game. This is like a lot of pressure to be like, how do I properly make the right decision of how to encode this data, right? Because I mean, I guess I could always change it later with some kind of refactor, but it will be much harder to refactor data that's nested layers within layers of dreams, as I said earlier. That's what we're essentially doing with this. It'll be much harder to refactor. So I want things to be final, and that's why the decision carries much more weight and is hard to make. Okay. Good. And good. Okay, so now I've fully completed the changes there. Wow, that was a lot longer than I thought. Okay. Finally, we've got the status effects and then triggered abilities. So let's go ahead and change those. Hopefully these will be easier. And then comes the fun process of testing this bad boy. Dot status effects. Okay, so now we're going to look for status effects defined via definitions, and then in the editor panel as well. You know, let's switch it up. This time we're gonna do the editor list and panels first. Let's do it that way. This one's fine. This one's fine. Oh, interesting. Huh. Oh, interesting. I see. I'll have to actually search for status effects. All right, we'll start with the definitions again then. That's not going to help us. This is the one I need to change right here. This should now be called SE. This, that's fine. Def defaults. Status effects. SE. This is another way I save data. I don't know if I explained this class here. The def defaults is a way of basically making it so that when a piece of data or definition is just using the default values, it won't encode the data to a string, thereby saving lots of information because the default settings are the most common. So therefore, it's only changing what's different, but it still has all the information necessary to recreate a proper structure. So that's why I do this default thing here. It's a way of merging the data with what's provided and what the defaults are so that the object's always complete and at minimal cost. Again, this is another way of cost-saving measure for data storage and loading and all that. All right. Interesting. And a counter-def has a status effects to it? Interesting. I was not aware of that. We may have to go and change that table. Are encounters defined as attribute holders? No, they're not. That's interesting though, but I do feel like I want to have that be consistent. I hadn't realized that encounters had status effects. They do. Look at that. Interesting. I do think I want to have that be consistent with that too. I'm not sure that it's as a concern because it's not inheriting from that. That one's okay. We don't have to change that because it's not inheriting from there. Okay. We need to search for status effects though. And I need to change that in the other panels. So let's go do that next. Yeah, definitions. Editor. Okay. Those we know are fine. That's just the types. This is just the types. These panels here, these are where it needs to get crazy. Refactor rename. SE. Do it. Did it say we have a problem? We haven't. Oh, I need to just refresh. There we go. Search. Okay. All right. We said we weren't going to change the encounter one, so we'll keep that as is. We are going to change the equipment editor panel. I may just go ahead and change this encounter one now I think about it, just because it probably makes sense to have it be consistent with everything else, even if it's not inheriting. This one does change. Let's see. SE. Okay. Rename this to SE. And unit editor panel. So that one I got renamed, so it's good to go. Okay. Refresh this whole thing. Definitions. Editor panels. Encounter. Yeah. Let's go ahead and rename the encounters too, just because it's going to be weird for me if I don't have them be the same. So I'll refactor this, and I got to change this in the table too. So SE for that. Okay. let's get rid of this. This will always have this property. Refresh again, definitions. Okay, here we go. Attribute holder may not have a stat spec, so we can put that as SE. That's true for that one. Good. Almost missed that guy. Okay, good. Just rechecking everything here, make sure everything's good to go. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back to my table here, and let's change that equipment or the encounter table to match as well. Modify table. Let's make sure that this name is consistent. So status effects here need to be SE. Okay. Make sure there's all these have values. Good. They're all non-null. Okay, good. Right changes there. Okay. So let's double check all our changes again. This is now SEs. Good. Def default is now SE. Def encounter. We changed all that. That's fine. Okay. Character editor panel, remove SE, that's good. Okay, good. Okay, good, good. Okay, that's good to go. Last one. Triggered abilities. Let's do it. Start with definitions first. Okay, and let's see here. We've got triggered abilities. Interesting how this one's used a lot less than the other one. Okay, that's, here we go. This is the one we need. All right, so this needs to be TA here, TA here. We need to find, this needs to be TA. Def scenario. This needs to be TA, TA, and that's fine as it is. All right, you know what? Let's expand this search. Let's just do triggered abilities search again. I don't think I was catching everything. Okay. Yep. TA good. Okay. Good. That's fine. Okay, good. Good. All right, now the definitions editor. This one's going to have a lot, so let's close this other one down. Okay, so this one's probably okay. That one's probably okay. All right, and it's the editor panels we need to change, so let's do it. All right, we're almost to the end. Refactor, rename this TA. Oh, equipment also has triggered abilities. Interesting. Oh no, that's right. We did. I was thinking encounters. Okay. TA for that. Player editor panel has triggered abilities as well. Interesting. Um, I'm gonna have to look at that. Player. All right, we're gonna come back to that one because I don't know if that one inherits or how that one works. That was not one we had changed earlier though, so we'll have to look at that one closely. TA for this one. Ta. I'm going to change this guy. Refactor rename to TA. Okay, tile editor panel, same thing. That one's okay. This one should already be changed. It is. Okay. Let's refresh our search again. Okay, just make sure we got it all. All right, so definitions editor, it's these panels. That one's correct. Is this player editor panel? This is the one I'm not sure about. So I want to look at the definition for a player. Oh, what is a definition? Oh, it's an attribute holder. Oh, absolutely, this one needs to be changed then. Yes, yes, it does. Absolutely, this needs to be changed. Rename, TA. All right, so we got to go change this in a few other places as well then. We got to go change it in our database under player rules, modify, TA, write changes, and then also in our actual thing here, player editor panel. TA. All right, and that concludes the renaming refactor. Oh man, brutal, exhausting process there, but that got us through. That renamed everything, and I think I'm happy with the rest of these names for the other structures within the definition. Oh man, just gotta stretch after that one. Okay, let's just double check our code changes here for that. So we had TAs here replaced. Good. Def defaults. That was the main thing in there. Got changed. Def scenarios now using TA. Good. Character editor panel. TA. Yes. And all these should be TAs. Good. Good. All right. I hope the data is ever more optimized and better, and this will help with our new nested structure. Okay. Good. All right. Now comes the fun part. We need to test to make sure that nothing broke. And now we'll see how thorough we actually were when the game loads up, and we'll see if it does what it needs to do. So that was a pretty vast obliteration of our old structure, rename things in a whole bunch of places, and hopefully now I won't have to change it going forward. But let's go take a look and see what happens now when I republish this, shall we? Debug and begin. Here we go. Let's do this. Water. Here we go. It's taking ever longer to compile this thing. I probably need to close it down and restart. There's some kind of a leak that happens in Animate over time, and it slows down your compiling. It eventually just runs out of memory. Oh god! And I had the thing open, so now I have to do it again. All right, you know what? Let's close everything down and see if that helps with speeding this process up. We'll restart this. Goodbye. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Okay. All right, let's begin. Let's see if we get any errors, shall we? All right. Deep breath here. Maltros, cross his fingers. I appreciate the support, man. I'm gonna do this. Yeah, if this works, I think it'd be worthy to do a little experiment and attempt to create an existing spell. Maybe we'll do that counter spell and attempt to create that independent of the other actions. Okay, so we already have an error. Okay, that's probably to be expected. All right, let's see if we can figure out what it is. Cannot create property status effects on a counter editor panel. Okay, so it looks like I forgot to rename status effects in the counter panel here. So this is why it's good to hard type everything, so you know basically getting a compile error like that or an initial runtime error is good because you don't run into the logic errors, which are much harder to track down. I can tell right away why something's not working. It's because names didn't match. What I tell you earlier in the stream, naming is one of the most important jobs of a programmer. Who would have thought that? Naming things. Never thought I would spend so much of my time scrutinizing over what to name stuff. Ah, you know who would appreciate that is login error. He's using our streams a little later. Maybe he'll hop in, but yeah, I'm sure he would relate to the naming stuff being a big challenge. Okay, well, it compiled this time, so that's a good sign. Let's go see if we can actually save stuff if it works. We'll know right away if we get a little error or if it saves it. So I'm gonna try and save that. We'll put a P in there. Okay, and did it work? Okay, triggered abilities worked. That's a good sign. Okay, good. Let's try saving the status effect. Let's go in here and save this. Yeah, oh, put that K in there. Save. Okay, that worked. Okay, it's looking pretty good so far. Maybe we're pretty thorough. All right, what else we gotta save a spell? Let's go try to save a spell. Okay, let's gotta redo that thing. Okay, K, K. Good. Okay, that looks solid as well. Anything else I would think try unit? Let's try trying to change a unit. Good. Wow, it actually I think it worked. That's exciting. Okay, let's so now we check in our code and say, okay, refactored the triggered ability um, status effects, nested status effects with abbreviated names so that going forward, nested definitions consume less data. Wow, that was a lot of work for that. But again, the little exercise we spent here in the last hour and a half or whatever it's been is this will have far-reaching consequences on the game. And there's, like I said, this is sort of the final step of that process you got to see. But it's been a long term of digesting, thinking about these vast implications and changes necessary to get to where we needed to do. Okay, but now we are ready to put it in action, and we're going to see the power of what this can achieve. So I'm going to attempt to do a simple test. We're going to create something we've already made, but in a new format. So I mentioned that counterspell earlier, and while I was talking about it, I kind of settled on that one being the one I want to do. So let's go to counterspell here. Okay. So counterspell applies surprise counter on target, and the counterspell's got its own series of targets. Now, it would be a shame to have to manually go and recreate these things, right? And reprogram how a counterspell works. I don't want to do that. I want to rely on what I already know. So, past Ross, thank you for thinking of me, future Ross, and putting a mechanism in that will make this process much smoother, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go into we're gonna basically reverse engineer the status effect for counterspell. Oh, you know what? Actually, one thing I didn't do yet. Before I get into that, I know I hate doing this to you guys. Before I get into doing things, hey, I've got a new person in the stream. I just want to just say hello. Safety Seth plays. Hey man, how are things going, Ross? Things are going great. Thanks for being part of the stream. It's great to have you here. I always appreciate a comment and a shout out, so welcome. We have just spent the last hour and a half or so. It's been 2 hours, almost 2 hours, jeez, doing the ever exciting task of renaming stuff inside of the code. I know it's not the most exciting thing to watch on a stream, but I tried to make it interesting by explaining why this is going to be a great thing for our players and for our studio. Um, because data management is important. It has far-reaching consequences on the user experience and the cost of operating a studio. So I hope that the changes we made today are going to have these nice return on investment in terms of you guys being able to download things very fast and get your updates, and I'll be happy because my monthly data costs will be brought down, and it will allow me to continue running the studio effectively and deliver more games to you. And this is Jimmy from Quincy. Ah, yes, excellent. Oh, it's so great to have you. Yeah, so I didn't mention we actually talked about PAX East earlier on the stream, and I was kind of sharing some of the experience, but I'll throw it back up again just so you got it in case you missed this article. But I did talk about our amazing experience. I kind of went through my article on Gamasutra. So if you want to kind of get a recap, just search for PAX East Summoner's Fate, and I'm sure this will come up right away in Google. It's got a whole recap. It's got some of our play reactions. There's the demo Hydra we built. Yeah. I didn't talk about this part in my recap, but I'll mention it now. One of the great things I love about travel experiences is is the people you get to meet, the personal connections. And yeah, so we had stayed at the um, I was trying to remember again. Help me remember, Jimmy. The name of the hotel was it Best Western, I think, or Western Inns. It was something with West in it, and he was the guy that helped us arrange our check-in stay. And it just so happens that he was also a gamer and a fan of Dungeons and Dragons and specifically the type of games we make. And so it was a very exciting experience to meet him face to face because we had done this all over the phone months in advance, and kind of get to have someone there local that could kind of help us out getting familiar with the area and also sharing the experiences of these games together. So it was a really cool thing. I actually made a connection with a lot of the hotel staff. There was another guy that picked us up from the train station that was telling us his story about being an entrepreneur, starting his own little business on the side, and we kind of connected there. So all these like interesting moments you have meeting people and sharing in the stories, that's part of what makes this journey of being an indie so exciting. Is I love those very personal connections. Best Western, that was the hotel. Yeah, it was a great stay for us, by the way. Yes. All right. So we are going to attempt to now leverage the new tools and to reconstruct Counterspell, which is already in the game, but we're going to do it in a more effective way. But before I do that, I'm going to do some quick tests to make sure that it actually still works with the current changes. I didn't bother to test my game real quick, so we're going to do that. Let's throw the Counterspell into this deck here. Counterspell. Here we go. Boom. Save. All right, so we're gonna do the temp test and attempt to do it here. Decks, maps. All right, so let's first off make sure that the um, game doesn't explode now, because we tested the saving and the data transfer, but I didn't test to make sure that the actual game could interpret the new definitions. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This looks like an error. Oh, no, no, it's good. Just a little bit of a lag. That's okay. All right, let's see if I... Generally, if things work, it's probably okay. It's a good sign. Does he still grapple people? Okay. Very good. Combo! Alright, and we want to test Counterspell, because we're going to test it once, and then we're going to test it again to make sure it actually does what it's supposed to do. So, I put that in the temp test. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to reboot this, and I'm going to test out Counterspell. So here's a Counterspell. We'll put it on... I guess the Gladiator. You can do our Counterspell first, Mr. Gladiator. Titus. Alright, counters next enemy spell. I will cast Armor. And Titus should say, nope. Nope! Counterspell. Alright, so that worked. Okay. So, now we're going to attempt to build Counterspell again, but the better way. I know, exciting, right? You guys are like, I want new content. We're going to remake the old stuff, but better. Boom! Yeah, and Safety says, I had a great time talking with you and your partner, Peter. Yeah, he was with us there, staying with me as well in the hotel. That was great. And then, yep, oh snap, Counterspell. Maltros says, boom. Okay, so I mentioned past Ross was very thoughtful of future Ross. I love to talk about the connection between my past and future selves and how I either make headaches for myself or give myself a gift in the future. And I'm hoping this will be a gift. Let's find out. So we've got surprise. Where is that thing? Counterspell. Here it is. Counters next enemy spell. Okay. All right. So here's some cool things we're gonna do. I'm gonna go into this guy here. This is a globally defined triggered ability. Okay. I'm gonna edit this, and now I'm gonna go ahead and hit this button here that says Get Data String. So what this did. I'm going to show you. This is going to be cool. It's going to look like a bunch of garble to you, and to me as well. All right. So there's what essentially defines what counterspell is. Does that isn't that awesome? It's a bunch of zeros and ones and commas and colons. I don't know how to describe what this is. You can make out some things, right? Like anim cast is the recovery animation. Okay, there's that helpful bit. But and there's some other things in here, but this is what defines the counterspell. Okay, that's the pure raw data. And remember I told you about why I went and renamed everything? Because all those names are getting applied into these nested definitions, right? All those names. So if I hadn't done the renamings, this thing could potentially be twice, 3 times long, right? And as I mentioned, when you start to cascade that amongst large amounts of content, those very small differences in the size of data have major implications on how much data takes up to both download, to load, to cost me to send it to you. So there's all kinds of implications there. So that's why I did all that work we just did to condense that. So now we've got this piece of data, right? And I'm going to go back and copy that. All right. Okay, I'm going to go back into here. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. Goodbye, global ability. And now we're going to go ahead and make a new one. All right. And I'm going to go into here, edit, and I'm going to paste. Actually, I don't have to do that. I can just load it right here. Boom. There we go. Look at that. I just made counterspell again. Thank you for past Ross. And then I'm just going to do that and then save it. Okay, so now counterspell is now no longer a global ability. It's now a nested ability wrapped entirely within the counterspell status. But let's go a step further because we still don't nothing else uses counterspell status except for counterspell. So what we're going to do now is get this guy's data. Okay, so now this is going to be fun. Here's what the counterspell status effect looks like. So I'm trying to see if I can understand what all this is. Oh, geez. And I'm thinking about the data structure for this. There may still be need some work to do as far as goes all this. It looks like it's what is all these? These are all comma delineated list, but they're commas that are it look like storing data that doesn't have anything in it. Oh no, maybe it does. Let's see. Comma 0, comma 1, -1. I'm not sure what those values represent exactly. Okay, but let's go ahead and copy this. All right. And now I'm going to go into spells, counterspell, counterspell. Where is it? Counterspell, counterspell. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and create a new nested status effect. Edit. And I'm going to load that in. Uh-oh. Did it not work? See, this is where I was hoping this would work. No! That should have loaded that in. Interesting. Why would that be happening? That should have loaded this guy into it. But it looks like something happened that didn't work. And I'm very sad now. Very sad. So something here has broken my process. This was working, and now it's not working. I don't know why that's the case. And let me see if I can try and think about what may be causing that issue. Are we getting an error here when it tries to load it? Let's try that and see if we get an error. Maybe that'll help. Nothing. Is this not hooked up? That's interesting as well. Let me see if I can get this string. Try to see what this looks like here. Oh, it's interesting. Okay. Is ideal cast animation. Okay. And anim type is -1. Oh, these are interesting little properties here. I just noticed. I'm going to go ahead and make those changes real quick. Def defaults. I want to make sure those are consistent. Ideal cast animation, let's make that be -1. And I also want to make anim type -1. those are storing data because the combo boxes are reflecting a -1 since nothing's selected, and I want to make sure that it's not storing data for those if it's not necessary. Okay. But why didn't it load this guy here is another good question. I'm trying to distinguish why that may be the case. I'm also not, I know these commas, these are commas that have been replaced with a coded sequence. And I'm not sure why the rest of this is not loading in correctly yet. There's some kind of structural thing that may be flawed in my grand master plan here. Probably something I didn't carry over, like a yeah, why didn't that work? That's very strange. Okay, let's take a look. I'm gonna think about more what I can do here. Let's try copying something else. Let me see if I can copy another thing into here. Let's go to another status effect. Let's try something simple like this. Something that doesn't have anything in it. Great, let's copy this. Let's see if I can copy this guy in there. I think we can get some better idea as to what may be happening by trying something else. Okay, edit. No, that's not loading at all, so there's something definitely wrong with that. It almost seems like it's not just not doing anything. I wonder why that's the case. I'm trying to think if there's any reason why that would have not encoded correctly here. All right, let's go ahead and create some trace statements. No big deal. All right, status effect editor panel. I should have a button that controls that, and that is the what's that button called? All right, let's close it down. This is just part of the fun of doing this stuff and doing it live. You guys get to see all of my nothing's pre-staged here. When there's bugs, they're real. Everything here is real. All right, so I'm looking for loads data string button. I gotta figure out where to find that at. And we're gonna go ahead and put some trace statements in to figure out what's going on. All right. Well, let's see. Load data string click. Okay. I doubt it was an issue with the load data string click. Okay. Okay. Trace load data string. Data string. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see if we can find some other clues. Let's go ahead and put in here trace data array. We're gonna find out exactly what it is. I have a feeling it's something to do with that separator. I have a very interesting way of encoding data where I pick a character that represents the structure. I'll explain in a sec here once I get this thing loaded. We'll go through the trace statements together. Let's also trace our separator here and see if there's an issue with that. That might give us, honestly, the direct answer is this separator property. I have a feeling it's something to do with that. Particularly because I think we had talked about that data editor list, and I think I had said something about this thing. No, but this has a list separator. That's a list separator, not the data separator. And it could be any number of reasons why it's not working yet. We're gonna see what happens next. Okay, let's go trace this and see what we get. We're gonna just go ahead and see if we can figure it out. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right. Here we go. All right, so we're going to go to status effects. I'm going to go to the counter spell. You know what? Let's just start with something simple. I'm going to get the data string for this, and I'm going to go into. You know what? Actually, I can do it within this. Let's see if we just do it within this thing itself. Nested status effects, edit, and let's try and load it within here. Oh, that. Oh, wow. Okay. See, so we definitely got something going on here that's interesting. Let's clear all this and let's try that again. Okay, separator was apparently going to be double colons here, and then yeah, so it looks like that separator is the issue. It's not. There's the description right here, and the assignment operator is that colon, so that is fine. One of these things here is another type of separator. That's clearly a separator right there. Um, hmm. But you can see all that stuff got wrapped in the description. So our issue is something to do with that separator. I did not connect together the different pieces correctly. So somewhere along the line, I have a separator that's not decoding the data correctly, and that's what our problem is. So once I figure out how to fix that separator, we should be good to go. Um, let's see if I can figure out where that other symbol is. It looks like I was using something like this. Uh, let's try and find that. Okay. Oh, did that? I want to see. That should be a. I want that to be a literal string. Here we go. Player data string. String to data. Okay, that's player data. Where am I defining it in here though? Def defaults. Root status data separator is this. Interesting. And then a status data separator is this. Very intriguing. Okay. Just out of curiosity, I wonder what would happen if I did this. Oh, wrong thing. I didn't want to do that. Crap. I want to do this. This can't create status effects in there. Okay. Let's go back into the units panel. I have another idea I want to try. Let's see if this will load that. That did load it. Okay. So there's the disconnect there. This guy was able to load the status effect data. The issue is the way I'm encoding the data. It works for this root level here, but it didn't work for loading it in the other panel. Probably because that other panel was nested, and so it had a different expectation for what the encoding should be. That is a really confusing, I know. Okay, let me think what else I can do here. Dun 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 dun. So copying it in there worked inside of this root level, but not in the other level. That's interesting. Let's see what this looks like again. Clearly this is using the root separator here. That makes sense. Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. It's like I need to find a way to make these separator values consistent here, is what I need to do. Um, okay, I've got another idea. I've got an idea. Where is root state? Where is this used? Root data separator. Okay. I have a theory. My theory is that I could change these items, and there's also the status list separator. Interesting. Okay, my gut feeling is telling me that I could get rid of these, change these separators with how I've re-encoded the data. I'm gonna try and test that. Let me look at some other list separators here. Let's see what we got here. Okay, trigger data separator, trigger list separator. I almost wonder if I could make them the same. Let's see. Trigger data separator. Okay. 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 I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna see if this works. Okay, here we go. Let's see if having these things match would do the trick. And now where's this thing used at? Within the data editor list. Okay. All right, let's try this. Recursive programming is always the thing that gets me. All right. Yeah, clever name has arrived. That's a debugging face if I've ever seen one. Good morning. Good morning to you. I was actually talking about you earlier. I was saying that you would have appreciated the earlier part of our stream. I talked about one of the greatest struggles of programmers is our ability to effectively name things. That is a bulk of where our mental energy goes. And we spent the first couple hours essentially renaming things in the game's data with the forward-thinking approach that by having very optimized data names, it will benefit players in having far smaller downloads to get the DLC, and also benefit the studio in having far less cost in terms of data interchanges happening on regular basis. So we've gone through the process of doing that, and now I'm attempting to execute on that, but we're having a problem with the way the data is being encoded. I've got a really weird ROS way of doing things, and I'm gonna see if this works now. So I just tried to change the data to make it so the data names are consistent, and we're gonna see if I can now load this into another status effect. Okay, let's see if it loads now. It did. Okay, that's a kind of good sign. I promise nothing yet. It may work. Let's take a look. I'm gonna use my this is my testability I put in here just for the purposes of doing things. But you know what? Let's just try and make that counterspell again. Let's just do that. Where's that surprise counterspell? Let's see if this works now. Get Control C. I'm gonna go into the spells and go into counterspell. Okay. And I'm gonna go into create a new nested status effect, edit. I think I can just paste that in and load. Hey, there it is. And then I'm going to edit this. Get data. Go back. Create a new one. Remove that. And then create a nested. Edit. And save. Okay, so what I basically just did here was I re-encoded the counterspell. save that. Uh-oh. So it doesn't like something. It's going to throw up. It's doing something. Oh no! What is it saying? Yeah, we have another error here. Oh dear. I am I am dismayed. That's a shame here. Something with how I've rejiggled this data is creating a major problem now where it can't reconcile the nested layers of data encoding. So I'm gonna have to. This is going to be a longer project than I can probably solve in the next 9 minutes, unfortunately. Um, but again, that's the fun of doing things live. It's real. Again, nothing pre-rehearsed here. It's all just me doing my work like I normally do. And so sometimes I sadly don't get things to work the first time. and and I had to sit here embarrassed that my code has failed. Um, uh, Clever Name says it's true, and dealing with things when the name implies it does something else than what it actually done. Yes, absolutely. So I had hoped that this would mark the completion of the major data reformat tool structure update I had planned. But sadly, there is some small splinter left in my side here that I'm gonna need to spend some time really digging through and scratching my head for a while to figure out what I did wrong in my encoding of this data to get the nested status effect. What should have happened is that if I had done this all correctly, I would have been able to store a definition of a status effect. Yeah, see here, looks like you can. Oh wow, this is really strange. Whatever it just did here, it's got all kinds of things happening in here. So I'll clearly some kind of weird mapping of the data. But what should have happened was I would have been able to go ahead and just copy the existing data I created for those status effects already, and then import them into the existing spell action, and then reference the nested status effect so that effectively the counter spell would now be fully self-contained in a single definition versus scattered across multitudes of tables. And that would have been awesome because then going forward, it means that I can make spells that way without having to have these dependencies and outside tables. And that makes the content develop much faster. It makes the content much more secure because it's now encapsulated within itself. But it still gives us the flexibility to reference those global abilities as I talked about earlier. So sadly, kind of a letdown. I apologize, but again, this is me working and it's real. So not every day is going to be a win. Some days are a fail, and sadly, that's about all the time I've got for today's stream. So I'll have to leave us at a cliffhanger, and I will do some investigation later today when I'm back at work, and I will be sure to, of course, give you guys an update. Maybe we'll try and do a follow-up stream as we did in the past once I've got a solution we can refer to. Yes, Clever Name says good luck. I appreciate that. Thank you. And of course, I very much appreciate all those that came to our stream today. It means a lot to have your support, even if you're just lurking in the channel. I always appreciate a shout out, of course. All these things help contribute toward us building our reputation, good faith with our player base, building an audience, building a name, building a recognition that, hey, I'm an indie, I'm here, what we're doing matters, and you should be excited about it. So thank you so much for being a part of the journey with us here, for being on the stream. It means a lot, and it makes a difference. So thank you for that. All right, guys, I will get back to you later. That's it for today, and I'll be on Discord, so I'll give you guys a shout out once I've got an answer to my big problem here. All right, and I will see you again next week. And also, I'm looking at doing some other streaming days in the future. So if you've got other time preferences that might work better, be sure to let me know because I'll adapt my schedule to be more flexible for you guys. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.